ready to ditch the history books and trade them in for a first-hand look at ancient Greece.
Well, not quite the Greece you might be picturing. No philosophers or marble statues on this trip.
Right. We're diving into the Greece of the New Testament.
Yeah, following the Apostle Paul's journey as he brought Christianity to Europe.
Talk about a huge moment in history. Imagine introducing a brand new faith in a place so steeped in its own traditions and beliefs.
It's amazing to consider, isn't it?
Where do we even begin with a story like this?
Well, our journey starts where Paul's did, in Europe, at the port of Neapolis.
Neapolis, huh? Where's that exactly?
Today it's known as Kavala in the region of Macedonia.
Ah, Macedonia, home of Alexander the Great. So Paul was stepping into a place with a pretty legendary past, even back then.
Oh, absolutely. And by Paul's time, Macedonia was a Roman province.
So he wasn't just dealing with Greek culture, but Roman influence too.
Exactly. It was a complex mix, rich in resources, but also considered a bit of a wild frontier compared to the south.
Sounds like Paul was walking into uncharted territory, both geographically and culturally.
He was. Our sources say he traveled from Neapolis to Philippi.
Okay, Philippi. Now that name rings a bell.
You're probably thinking of Little Rome.
Right. Why was it called that?
Philippi was a Roman colony fiercely proud of that identity, boasting a forum and all the trappings of Roman life.
They went all in on Romanization. But wasn't Philippi also the site of a major battle?
You're right. The battle where Mark Antony and Octavius defeated Brutus and Cassius.
Ah, yes. The assassins of Julius Caesar. Talk about a place soaked in history.
But we're here for the biblical connections. And Philippi is crucial to the story of Christianity.
So what happened there that was so significant?
This is where Paul met Lydia, a successful businesswoman dealing in purple cloth.
Purple cloth. Sounds like a luxury item. Lydia must have been pretty wealthy.
And influential, too. But she was also a God-fearer.
So already interested in Jewish teachings.
Exactly. And when Paul arrived with his message of Jesus as the Messiah, well, it resonated deeply with her.
And she became the first recorded European convert to Christianity.
That's right. Her baptism took place at a stream now known as Lydia Spring, marking a pivotal moment for the spread of Christianity into Europe.
Imagine a simple stream becoming a landmark in the history of faith.
It's incredible.
Hey,
But Paul's time in Philippi wasn't all smooth sailing. He ended up imprisoned, along with his companion Silas.
imprisoned. That escalated quickly. What happened?
Well, their preaching was causing quite a stir.
Disrupting the status quo, I imagine.
Exactly. Remember, this was a brand new faith, challenging traditional beliefs. Not everyone was thrilled.
So what was their fate in prison?
Well, get this. An earthquake shook the prison.
An earthquake.
Yeah.
Sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie.
It gets even more dramatic. The earthquake threw open the prison doors.
No way.
It's true, and broke the chains that bound the prisoners.
Talk about a divine intervention.
The jailer, terrified everyone had escaped, was about to take his own life.
Oh no.
But Paul stopped him.
That's incredible.
And the impact of that earthquake. Profound.
What happened?
The jailer, witnessing this miraculous event and Paul's compassion, asked to be baptized along with his whole family.
So even in prison, amidst chaos, Christianity found a foothold.
That seems to be a recurring theme in Paul's journey. He faces opposition, but somehow Christianity takes root and spreads.
It's like watching a wildfire spread from a single spark. Makes you wonder where that spark will land next.
Well, Paul left Philippi and traveled along the Via Egnatia, an ancient Roman road.
The Via Egnatia, it stretched all the way to Constantinople, right?
That's right. And it led Paul to his next stop, Thessaloniki.
Thessaloniki, I know that name. It's a major city in Greece, even today.
A major hub, even back in Paul's time. Founded by Cassander and named after Alexander the Great's half-sister.
Wow. From a Roman colony to a city named after Alexander the Great's family. Paul was certainly covering a lot of ground.
He was, and in each place his message was met with a mix of reactions.
Some open, some resistant. It's fascinating how these locations shape the story.
Thessaloniki was different from Philippi. It was a bustling commercial center.
So a melting pot of cultures and ideas.
Precisely. And Paul's preaching there, just like in Philippi, had a mixed response.
Some embraced it, some rejected it.
Yes. And it ultimately led to a riot.
A riot. So much for peaceful preaching.
Paul and Silas had to flee the city under the cover of darkness.
Wow. Talk about a dramatic escape.
It was. They sought refuge in Berea.
Berea, another stop on the Via Egnatia.
Yes. and a place where the people had a very different attitude toward Paul's message.
Okay, so Berea was a more welcoming environment?
You could say that. They were known for being open-minded.
So they were willing to listen to what Paul had to say.
The sources describe them as noble-minded, eager to examine the scriptures and see if Paul's teachings align with what they knew.
Wow. Critical thinkers, examining the evidence. That's pretty impressive for the time.
It is. However, even in Berea, the peace didn't last.
Oh no, what happened?
Paul's pursuers from Thessalonica caught up with him.
So much drama.
It forced him to move on once again.
And where did this constant movement lead him?
To a city that would truly test his abilities. Athens, the intellectual heart of ancient Greece.
Athens. Wow, that's a whole new level of challenge. It sounds like we're just getting started. Athens.
Yeah.
Talk about a change of pace. From riots and prisons to the intellectual hub of ancient Greece.
It's an interesting shift. Imagine Paul arriving in this city, surrounded by temples and statues dedicated to all sorts of gods.
It must have been overwhelming. How do you even introduce a monotheistic faith in a place where gods are everywhere you look?
That's where things get fascinating. As Paul was walking through the marketplace, he noticed something unusual.
The marketplace. What was it called again?
The Agora. It was a bustling center of activity filled with philosophers and merchants and everyday Athenians.
Ah, the Agora. I can picture it now. What did Paul see there that was so unusual?
An altar. But not just any altar. This one was dedicated to an unknown god.
An unknown god. That's interesting.
It tells us a lot about the Athenian mindset. They were open to the possibility of other deities, always seeking knowledge and understanding.
So they were hedging their bets, just in case they missed one.
Exactly. And Paul saw an opportunity. Instead of condemning their beliefs, he used this altar as a starting point for his message.
So he met them where they were, intellectually speaking.
Right. He stood in the agora and proclaimed, "What you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you."
What a bold statement.
It was a brilliant way to capture their attention, to engage them on their own terms.
I can picture it now. Paul, in the middle of the marketplace, surrounded by curious onlookers, the aroma of spices and fresh fish in the air, delivering this powerful message.
It must have been quite a scene. But Paul's perching wasn't limited to the marketplace. He was also invited to speak at a more formal setting.
A more formal setting. Where was that?
The Areopagus.
The Areopagus. Remind me, what was that exactly?
It was a council of elders, some of the most influential citizens in Athens. They met on Mars Hill overlooking the city.
Ah, Mars Hill. A place that symbolized Athenian democracy and free speech. What a setting for Paul to deliver his message.
It was. Imagine him standing there with the Acropolis in the background, addressing these powerful figures who held the fate of the city in their hands.
Wow, talk about pressure. So what did he say to them? Did he try to win them over with philosophical arguments?
The sources actually record a portion of his speech, and it's fascinating. He didn't get bogged down in theological debates.
So what was his approach?
He spoke about the creator God, the one who doesn't dwell in man-made temples.
Emphasizing the difference between his God and the many gods the Athenians worshipped.
Exactly. He also pointed to Jesus' resurrection as proof of God's power. And he even quoted their own poets.
He quoted their poets.
He said, "In him we live and move and have our being."
Clever, using their own cultural references to make his points.
It was a masterful blend of philosophical language and Christian theology.
So how did they react to this?
As you might expect, it was a mixed bag. Some scoffed, some were intrigued, and a few even became followers.
Not a mass conversion, but still.
He planted seeds of Christianity in the heart of Athenian thought.
It's amazing to think about those seeds taking root. But Paul's journey didn't end in Athens, did it?
No, it didn't. From the heights of the Areopagus, he descended into a city known for its trade and its diversity.
Which city was that?
Corinth.
Corinth. Now that's a city with a reputation.
It was a bustling port city known for its, shall we say, less than pious reputation.
Let's just say Corinth was known for its indulgences. So how did Paul, a man of such conviction, handle a place like that?
Corinth presented a unique set of challenges, but Paul was optimistic.
Always looking for opportunities to spread the word.
Exactly, and he even received a vision from God.
A vision.
Encouraging him to stay in Corinth, promising him protection.
So he felt divinely guided to stay in this, let's call it, lively city.
He did, but preaching doesn't pay the bills, right?
True. So how did Paul support himself in Corinth?
Well, remember, he was a tent maker by trade.
Ah, yes. The side hustle of the Apostle Paul.
And he met a couple in Corinth who shared his craft. Aquila and Priscilla.
A tent-making power couple.
They had also been expelled from Rome, so they teamed up and set up shop.
So Paul was able to support himself while continuing his ministry. But knowing Paul, I'm sure there was some drama along the way.
Of course. He was accused of preaching against Roman law and ended up on trial.
Another trial.
Before the proconsul, Gallio. Just picture it, Paul standing in the forum near the bema.
Wait a minute. The bema.
Yes.
Doesn't Paul talk about the bema in his letters, comparing it to God's judgment seat?
You got it. And that's what makes these locations so fascinating. They're not just places on a map.
They're tangible links to the events described in the Bible.
Exactly. And the ruins of the bema still stand in Corinth today, a reminder of the challenges Paul faced.
Wow. It's like stepping back in time. So what happened at the trial?
Paul was acquitted.
Acquitted. So he was free to go.
Gallio basically said it was an internal Jewish matter and he didn't want to get involved.
Lucky break for Paul.
He was able to continue preaching in Corinth for another year and a half.
Wow. That's the longest he's stayed anywhere on his journey so far.
It was a fruitful time. He established a thriving Christian community, and his letters to the Corinthians.
They're some of the most well-known texts in the New Testament.
It's incredible to think about how those letters originated from this bustling port city.
It really is. From the intellectual debates in Athens to the trials and triumphs of Corinth, Paul's journey through Greece was quite a whirlwind.
And it's just a glimpse into the world of biblical locations. There's so much more to explore.
Like what?
The rugged Mani Peninsula, for instance.
Okay, the Mani Peninsula.
Yes. And the monasteries of Meteora.
Wait, monasteries?
They're perched high atop towering rock formations.
Monasteries on cliffs. That sounds incredible. And what about the island where John received his visions, the visions that became the Book of Revelation?
Ah, yes, the island of Patmos.
That's a story for another time. Okay, so we've journeyed with Paul through bustling cities, intense trials, philosophical debates, but now we're switching gears completely.
Right, we're heading to an island.
And not just any island. This one's steeped in mystery and, well, revelation.
Literally. We're talking about Patmos, a small, rugged island in the Aegean Sea.
Quite a contrast from the cities Paul navigated, but incredibly significant in the biblical story. This is where John, the author of Revelation, received his visions, right?
It is, and that isolation, that remoteness, it really plays a key role in the story.
Because John wasn't on vacation, was he? He was exiled there by the Roman Emperor Domitian.
Right, during a time of intense persecution for Christians.
So while Paul was facing riots and trials in those bustling cities, John was enduring exile on this remote island.
It's striking, isn't it? The diverse challenges faced by early Christians. Imagine Patmos in those days. Stark, rugged cliffs, the relentless sun, that endless blue of the Aegean Sea.
It must felt like the edge of the world. And yet it was in this isolation that John received the visions that would become the Book of Revelation.
A book filled with symbolism, prophecy, and a message of hope for Christians facing persecution.
And there's a specific place on Patmos that's central to this story, right?
You're thinking of the Cave of the Apocalypse, believed to be the very cave where John received those visions. It's a site of pilgrimage for centuries now.
So you can actually visit the place where Revelation was written. That's incredible. What's it like inside the cave?
It's a space that's both natural and sacred. Dimly lit, with a sense of reverence. There's a small chapel built inside and a fissure in the rock where, according to tradition, John heard the voice of God.
Wow. Giving me chills just thinking about it. That's such a powerful text. The text that's had such a profound impact on Christianity was born in this remote, isolated place.
It speaks to the enduring power of faith, even in the face of adversity.
It really does. And even though Patmos might seem worlds away from those bustling cities where Paul preached, both stories highlight the challenges and triumphs of early Christianity.
Absolutely. From marketplaces to prisons, philosophical debates to isolated islands, the message of this new faith found its way into the hearts and minds of people from all walks of life.
It's amazing to see how these locations, so different from each other, are woven together by faith, resilience, and the power of belief. It makes you realize that these aren't just historical footnotes.
You're right. They're places you can still visit today, experience firsthand, and connect with the very roots of Christianity. Walk those ancient roads, see the ruins of those cities, feel the isolation of Patmos, and imagine yourself standing in the very places where history was made.
Like stepping back in time into the world of the New Testament. It's a reminder that these stories, they aren't just ancient tales. They're part of a living history that continues to shape our world today.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into ancient biblical locations in Greece, I'm left with a sense of awe at the challenges those early Christians faced, and wonder at the enduring legacy they left behind.
A legacy that's etched in stone, whispered in caves, carried on the winds that sweep across the Aegean Sea. And maybe it inspires us to look at our own surroundings with a fresh perspective.
To uncover the hidden stories, to appreciate the power of faith to transform lives, even in the most unexpected places.
So the next time you see a map of Greece, don't just see islands and cities. See Lydia's Spring, the Athens and Corinth, the Areopagus, the Cave of the Apocalypse. See those places where faith took root, where history was made, and where the story of Christianity continues to unfold.
What a journey it's been.
It has. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around you.